We'll start with the roll call.
Councilman Daley?
Here.
Councilman Duper?
Here.
Councilman Menard?
Present.
Councilman Popescu?
Here.
Mayor Rigsby?
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Okay, we had no closed session, but we did discuss we had a committee meeting of the audit committee, and we'll have a full report of that coming up very shortly. But we will start with the invocation Pledge of Allegiance by Mayor Pro Tempore Duper. Please stand.
Please bow your heads. Our Father in heaven, thank you once again for the opportunity to meet and discuss the affairs of our town. Help us to make wise choices and decisions and guide us through the evening. Also be with our town and through the holidays and all those that are needy and need comfort, and we ask that you watch over them a little more extra special this month. Thank you. Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Would the public like to speak on any items not on the agenda? This is your chance. 3 minutes of glory. You do it 5 times and you get Andy Warhol's quota. Okay, no takers. Then we'll go straight into our audit report from Rogers, Anderson, Malady, and Scott.
Mayor, council members, we have Terry Shea here from our audit firm to just kind of discuss what their role in the preparation of the financial statements is. You can.
The arrows? Simple. Good evening, Your Honorable Mayor, members of City Council. We just went over the audit report with the committee. I want to thank the courtesies extended to us by the Finance Department, Diana and Sonia. They do a tremendous job. I'm here basically to say what our responsibility is. The city's responsibility is to present the financial position and results of its operations fairly and in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles, to adopt sound accounting principles, provide reasonable accounting estimates, establish and maintain internal controls, and prevent and detect fraud. Our responsibility as auditors is we obtain a reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. We examine on a test basis evidence supporting those amounts. We'll send out like confirmations to your bank, and if you have any debt, we'll confirm the debt. We assess the accounting principles used, estimates made, and evaluate the overall financial statement presentation. We do review your internal control policies, and we do test those policies, and then we express an opinion on your financial statements. Our opinion states that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. Significant accounting policies have been applied consistently. Your estimates are reasonable, and the disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. Other key points. This year you had the implementation of GASB 65, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It's kind of a confusing change, so I won't bore you too bad with that, but it didn't affect your statements much. We had no disagreements with management. We found no material errors or irregularities. No significant accounting issues discovered. You had no material weaknesses, and then there were no compliance issues. There is a big change coming next year, which is GASB 68, which I'm sure Diane will tell you all about. Did I go too far? Oh, it's over.
I always like to ask this question. How do we compare to other cities that you audit?
Your finance department does a great job. They're very professional and very diligent, and they work hard. So,
I just like hearing that every year.
Yeah.
It's good. Thank you very much.
all right. Any questions?
Thank you.
I also have a presentation, and I'll be presenting just a summary of the numbers and the actual financial report before you, which is our comprehensive annual financial report. It includes, there are 3 basic sections to the financial report. It's the introductory section, which includes a letter of transmittal. Then we have the GFOA Certificate of Excellence for Financial Reporting, which we received for last year's financial report. Then we have just a graph of the principal officers, and then we have an organization chart of the city staff. We also have in the financial section, we have what's the independent auditor's report, which is issued by our auditors. We have management discussion and analysis, which includes discussion of significant changes from last year to this year. And then we have the basic financial statements, which are presented in 2 ways, which is the government-wide financial statements, which are a full accrual, city as a whole, kind of big picture, longer-term financial presentation. And then we have the fund financials, which are modified accrual and are more of a current resources to current uses of resources. We have the notes to the financial statement, required supplementary information, and supplementary information, which gives more detail of each fund in comparing the combining statements and then the statement of changes in fund balance. We have the last section in the report includes the statistical section, which kind of gives trends of the financial aspects of the city, our revenue capacity, then our debt capacity and our debt overall coverage, and then we have some demographic and economic information and some operational information as far as staffing levels and community aspects of our, like, roads and facilities, infrastructure, kind of what we maintain. So basically the financial statements include the city as a whole. Then we also have the Loma Linda Housing Authority, which is presented as a special revenue fund. And then we have our successor agency, which is the former redevelopment agency. And that is presented as a fiduciary fund, but private purpose trust fund that we basically manage and we are the staff for. The city financial results, this is the government-wide presentation, and it gives you the governmental funds, and then we have what's called the business type activity, which are enterprise funds, which are water, sewer, and our Loma Linda connected communities. Basically, this just gives a presentation of our overall net position of where we ended the year. And for our governmental funds, we have a total of $85 million. The bulk of that is in our capital assets, which is our infrastructure for the community. And then we also have, for the business type, we have $28.4 million overall in net position. This is our statement of activities for our government-wide presentation, and basically this gives us a picture of how we operate. We take our full expenditures and then we first apply our what's called our program revenues to come up with the net cost of what this service that we're providing to the community is costing us as far as our governmental activity and our business type activities. And then our general revenues get applied, which those are mainly our taxes that we collect, any contributions we receive, miscellaneous revenues, then get applied to come up with what happened, the operations for the fiscal year. So in our governmental, well, overall in the city, we ended the year with 2.6 million, which was basically an increase to our net position. The bulk of that comes from the widening of the Stewart Street project, which was funded through contributions from the Loma Linda University Medical Center. Okay. This is our general fund, and this will present, basically, it's the governmental funds, and this is based upon the modified accrual, and it's just basically a presentation of our fund balance. GASB came up with different categories, so now we present our fund balance in these particular categories, which are non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Basically, our committed is what we call our rainy day reserve. Assigned, we also have a reserve in there, which we've designated for equipment replacement, which is approximately 1.2 million. And then unassigned, we have 5.8 million in our general fund, which is available fund balance that has not been designated for basically any purpose. And overall, that we have 10.8 million in fund balance, which is 85% of our annual expenditures. And then general fund, this is the result of operations, basically our revenues and our expenditures and other financing sources. So as you can see, the result of operations for the general fund, we added $757,000 to our general fund this year. This is our second consecutive year of adding significant amounts to our general fund. So I think it's a reflection of our operations and the economic recovery that we are experiencing. So we have seen some increases in development, and then we are seeing some property tax increases due to the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. We are seeing what's called residual receipts from the county through those. Basically, what they took away from us is now being allocated to the taxing entities, so we are seeing some increases in those distributions. Then we are presenting here, this is our business type activities, which again is our water, sewer, our water, sewer, and the connected communities. And this is just showing the change in our operations and basically it's showing the end results in the operations. As you can tell, we are operating in a negative position for these funds. These are operated as business type activities, and as in the water fund, we are observing that the main difference is in our depreciation. We have significant assets that are being depreciated, and we are not adding new assets, so it's creating this negative in our water enterprise fund. In our sewer capital fund, these are negatives incurred through cost of service, and for both of those funds, this past year, we did do a rate study and we did do a rate increase to address these issues with the negative operations to hopefully within a few years start to see a positive return on those operations. The Loma Linda Connected Communities, we do see a $500,000 negative there. And that is mainly due to interest accruing on loans that when we first started the program, we issued loans from the redevelopment agency to the connected communities. Operations has not yielded enough to be able to pay the interest on those loans, which is creating this big negative in operating for the Loma Linda Connected Communities. It's a non-cash, basically it just becomes an additional loan, but it's not cash actually going out the door. And then, again, this is our successor agency, and basically it's now presented as a private purpose trust fund, and we just present here the assets, the deferred outflows of resources, and then the liabilities that contain are contained within that. We show its net position. So it does have a negative net position as an overall. Has more liabilities that are out there than it does have assets to pay off those liabilities at the present time. And then here we show the change in the fiduciary net position of the successor agency. So we show what came into the successor agency as additions. And those are basically the distributions we get from the county through our ROPS, which we submit, which are, excuse me, our recognized obligation, basically, we have to do 2 ROPS a year, and we submit them to the county, and then they authorize the payments for the obligation on those. And so these are the disbursements we receive annually. And then we do make the obligation payments, so we pay the bonds that are outstanding and any operational needs that we have as far as consultants or contracts that are still out there. So we'll have those. This special item of land transfer, we did have the state controller came out and did an audit of the asset transfers from when the redevelopment was dissolved. And they did find some assets that we needed to actually recognize in the successor agency. So that's what this increase is related to. And then you will see a restatement here of $700,000, which our auditor, Terry, referred to, which is a change in our accounting, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and the way we recorded cost of issuance for bonds that were issued. So they now require us to expense them, and so we had been carrying them and expensing them over the life of the bonds. So we had to fully expense them at this point to comply with GASB 65. So this is the end of the operating year, and again, it's a negative position of $5.3 million. And I'd just like to thank everybody, especially my staff, and especially Sonia, for all her hard work. And I wanted to point out she did a lovely job with the cover. I'm very proud of it. It shows our Stewart Street widening project, and I want to thank all staff and the council for all their hard work.
And I would like to echo what Diana said, is if you look at the page 10, that we end last year with a positive, in general fund, positive $757,000. That means that every department head are very frugal. We are very tight as far as running the trips. So I thank you to all the department head and the staff for doing a good job watching out for their budget and expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you, as always, for a comprehensive and good report. I'm along with the other councilmen, I'm very pleased with the status of our financial situation. Could we go back to slide 11, though, and you explained those, and it may be that my wattage is a little low tonight, but those are some pretty radical swings between 13 and 14. Can you particularly address the water acquisition and water enterprise so that I'm sure I understand that?
In the water acquisition, it is mainly to report development impact fees that come in from developers. So it may swing from year to year, where one year we may take in development fees and we may see more of a positive. In the next year, if we do a project, you'll see the outflow and you'll see a negative. So that's for the water acquisition.
So the positive balance for 14 is reflective of increased development activity.
Right.
Okay.
Not as much expenditures, so we actually
Right.
added to the net position.
Okay. And the enterprise?
And the enterprise fund, the big 17 million, that was us reporting last year, the contribution of Lockheed for the
For the water treatment plant that you went to view,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that's an asset. That's
Okay.
$15 million all by itself.
Okay.
That facility.
Yep, I remember that.
And then for last fiscal year, we done project replace pipeline, and so that's the cost.
Okay.
And water meters.
Yeah, we love those new water meters. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. It's very good. And your work, both of you, very good work. Thank you very much. And thanks to our auditors. Our auditors liked you too. They like us, and everybody likes everybody, so it's a good year. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we'll go to the second item. I think this requires drawing of straws.
Mr. Mayor, pursuant to our previous practice, I have prepared the 4 straws to which are marked vote, indicating that the recipient of that straw will participate on the action. And I will circulate those amongst the 4 who have previously declared a conflict of interest based upon employment or source of income with the university or the medical center.
Any order. It's all random.
Let's start in the middle. Let's start. Okay.
Not a voter.
No participation. Participation. That's the winner. Participate.
Okay, we leave.
All right. Councilman Duper. No participation. Should have used candy canes tonight. Sorry. Thought of that.
Thank you.
Oh, I was going to introduce. Mr. Mayor Pro Tempore and members of the City Council. Before you is the precise plan of design, application and certificate of appropriateness for the central building facade remodel to be located at 11106 through 11130 Anderson Street. The property is located southwest corner of Anderson and Mound Street. It is zoned institutional, general plan institutional, and the current office use are offices. And there is the site plan for the site, Old Loma in the Market and Old Bank Building. On June 1st, 2014, McKenna et al. Submitted an architectural assessment of the structures and concluded the buildings are not considered significant architectural resources. That doesn't mean they're not important culturally, they're just not important architecturally. And the proposed remodel will not constitute an adverse environmental impact. There's been a lot of changes to those buildings over the years. So this proposed remodel will bring it back closer to what it was how it originally was designed. On October 6, 2014, the Historic Commission issued a certificate of appropriateness to allow the applicant to remodel the buildings per the attached plans. The commission found the proposed remodel would bring the buildings again closer to the original design. This would typically go before the planning commission, but the same conflict that is here arises with them as well. So it went directly to the city council. So some of the more significant changes will be the removal of the cantilever awning and the removal of the cladding around the first story. There will be replacement of existing windows, install a new panel, spandrel glass over the existing first story windows, replace the main entrance doors with dark anodized aluminum to match existing doors, and a new paint scheme. And the changes to the Loma in the Market will be new windows with horizontal mullions for the westernmost windows on the front facade. Existing windows to be replaced with new windows with vertical mullions, and replace existing doors with dark anodized aluminum to match existing main door entrance. This is what the building looks like now. And the additions that we're speaking of are that and this cladding around the pilasters. So they'll be removing that awning that was added sometime way after the building was originally designed, and removing the cladding. And then you'll see right now, when I go to the next, it'll line up with the columns that are right above it. So again, it would also involve a new paint scheme, bringing the buildings much closer to how they were originally designed. And the back will also get new paint scheme. The colors that they'll be using, and again, it's very minor, but it does require Planning Commission, Historic Commission, and City Council review and approval because of the certificate of appropriateness. The Historic Commission's recommended conditions of approval: a lighting plan that highlights the building's architectural features, incorporate a wall-mounted plaque detailing the history of each building. If possible, create seating areas within the public right-of-way, window treatments to reflect period use. Applicant shall submit a detailed landscape plan within the public right-of-way in conformance with city standards, and coordinate with the Public Works Department the rehabilitation and replacement of damaged sidewalk, curb, and gutter in conformance with city standards. The report says that these were incorporated into the conditions of approval. They weren't. So if your motion is to approve, these will be the Historic Commission's recommended conditions of approval. The applicant is aware of them. They've been aware since the Historic Commission, so I've informed him that these will be added, no issue from the applicant. And your notices actually went out November 26th, not October. So in compliance with our noticing requirements. So that concludes my presentation. One more time, that's what the buildings will look like, and that's what they look like now. So a nice facelift, minor, plus good color scheme, really make the buildings look a whole lot nicer.
2 questions.
Yes,
Is
sir.
this anticipating any specific tenant that's moving in, or do we?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
And then second thing, how do you feel about the Historical Commission conditions? Is there anything you think is not appropriate? Are they all appropriate? What's the staff?
No, I
recommendation?
think it'd be nice to create some type of maybe uplighting, just to, I mean, they'll have to work on it to see where it'd be, maybe above this cantilever, so whenever there's a sign, maybe uplight it. Maybe some sconces up here that maybe direct the light upwards. Again, they have not come up with that design just yet. The other one is the seating area within the public right-of-way. I added if possible because their condition of approval was to create seating areas. However, there's ADA accessibility requirements, so they may not be able to.
That's the one I was kind of concerned with.
Yes, so I guess the condition can be work with staff to see if it's possible to create the seating areas. The other thing too is get too much into it, but they're looking at possibly adding trees within the public right-of-way. It's not part of the plans now because we don't know what can survive there or be planted there. Plus, there's parking here, and depending on where you plant those trees, when you open your door, it may hit those trees. Plus, there's a certain law out there right now that requires that if you striped your parking spaces, I think there needs to be some type of minimum requirements for those spaces, and it will create headaches. So they're working with the Public Works Department on that at this time. So,
Okay, thank you, sir.
you're welcome.
Do you happen to know if these buildings may be torn down at some point as part of the master plan?
I do not believe that in any of the plans that I've seen that those have been shown as to be demolished.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're looking for a motion.
Is this a public hearing?
Or,
Is there a public?
it is a public hearing, sorry. I will now open the public hearing if anybody wishes to, thanks. If anyone would like to make a comment, please step forward. And seeing nobody jump out of their seats, I will go and close the public hearing. Oh, that's awesome. can now entertain a motion.
I'll move it. Move approval, and I'll, let the applicant decide.
With the recommendations as
Of
stated.
Yeah, as stated by the Historical Commission.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
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 And we have it. Trying to move this along and get Ron home.
All right, this is the first reading and the setting of the second reading for January 15th for an amendment to Title IX of the Loma Listed Municipal Code by adding a chapter relating to panhandling here in the city. In the last couple of years, there's been a substantial increase in panhandling activities, primarily in front of Stater Brothers, in front of Walmart, at the gas stations, and with fairly aggressive panhandling, people coming up to shoppers and visitors to the city. And then there seems to have been a real explosion of the freeway side panhandling at Mountain View. There's actually a rotation of the guys. They use the same sign. It's pretty interesting that there's different guys that hold up the same sign. I lost my house in a fire, and one day it's some short guy, and one day it's a tall guy. And, anyway, there seems to be a lot of panhandling going on. It is impacting the quality of life in the community, the quality of life for people that are visiting here for business, medical treatment, and activities as well that don't reside in the city. So the ordinance addresses specifically targeted panhandling and aggressive panhandling. What we want to stay away from is a more and we want to be very careful. The city attorney has been has worked with us drafting this carefully to make sure that we do respect free speech rights and the ability of people to exercise their free speech. This specifically pertains to aggressive panhandling in specific locations, stores, ATMs, parking lots, and those places where it is a threatening type environment. Did I hit everything, Rich? Okay. This is, as I said, the first reading. We are open to council taking it, because this does have some free speech issues and some other issues, to council taking a good look at this if they feel necessary to give us some direction. If not, we are ready to open the public hearing and set the second reading.
So prior to this ordinance, was there no effort to enforce this type of behavior, or?
There's no ability to enforce. So if somebody comes up to you and you're at the gas station and they're in your face the whole time, give me $1, or stop you, block your path coming out of Stater Brothers or Walmart, outside of touching you or assaulting you, there's no real ability to have them move along their way, especially at the freeway off-ramps. What we're seeing with those guys there is not just the panhandling, but especially at Mountain View on the coming in on the westbound, there's, trash and debris and everything that's associated with these guys hanging out there.
And how would we even attempt to educate any of these people that what they're doing is now illegal?
We have a law enforcement group that does this throughout. San Bernardino has a similar ordinance. Redlands has a similar ordinance. And if the guys that are on the San Bernardino side of the freeway, they get rousted and asked to move along. And I believe that there is some the sheriff's department can take some steps to move them along. If they're on the Loma Linda side of the freeway, they cannot do that.
So prior to this, the sheriff could not ask them to leave because there was no law?
As it exists right now,
I see.
the sheriff cannot, is very limited on what they can do as far as limiting this behavior.
Okay.
If I may, there is a penal code section that applies to accosting a person in a public place for purpose of begging or soliciting alms. That is, it's section 647 of the penal code, but it's not a high priority for the district attorney's office to prosecute those cases. There's also a vehicle code section 22520.5A that bars solicitation or vending within 500 feet of a freeway off-ramp. But again, that would not be a high priority for enforcement. This ordinance would give us some additional enforcement tools as infractions rather than trying to get the DA to prosecute a misdemeanor.
So this ordinance is distinct from a vagrancy ordinance. That would be more for homelessness?
This is not a vagrancy ordinance, correct?
Yeah. Is there First Amendment protection for lies about your financial situation?
Unfortunately, we cannot regulate the content of the speech employed.
As long as they don't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Correct.
Yeah.
So as long as they stand passively and they could hold a placard on their chest or something and stand there somewhere, and that's okay?
Probably, as long as they're out, not stepping out into traffic, interrupting people driving by, knocking on windows, any type of aggressive or, them taking the first step is prohibited. A passive stance, like you're saying, does fall within the free speech realm.
There are quite a few other cities that are taking a stronger approach to this and have enacted stronger ordinances, so I don't think we're on cutting edge or really have to worry about a first strike here in this town. So I'm not sure this is actually enough, because the problem is and Redlands is facing this now for years and years and years, and I will actually compare it to a different city. Santa Monica has been very open and very friendly to the transient homeless community, and if you go to Santa Monica, you know that they're everywhere. Redlands was the same until Redlands realized it had kind of overrun them. It's like cockroaches. If you see the first one, you need to start taking action, because by the time you have 100,000 in your house, it's going to be really hard to get rid of them. It's just kind of a quality of life issue, and a lot of communities are taking a harder stance. Now, on the enforcement side, the Sheriff's Department has a really touchy, feel-good new thing called the HOPE team, where they drive around and they try to get people all kinds of resources and do all that kind of stuff. So I don't think by enacting this, we're going to create a situation where the Sheriff's Department's going to go out there and just throw everybody in jail. However, it does give them some teeth to effectively take care of some of those more problematic people. So,
One man's
is that a fair
panhandling.
assessment?
Well, with staffing, to deal with the subject with the 647C section, you're correct. We do utilize that, but you take a person out of patrol to transport them to West Valley and Rancho Cucamonga so that you relocate them until they can find a new home. But we also have the issue of a location near Anderson and Redlands Boulevard, which is feeding the homeless every morning, which is drawing people into the city. That's what's causing the sudden explosion recently. And the deputies are kind of besides themselves of how to deal with that issue.
Isn't that 500 feet from the freeway off-ramp?
They are then finding locations to live within the city that are close to that place to get food.
The feeding and the panhandling are too. Although they get fed and go out and panhandle, they are not panhandling at the feeding station.
Yeah, the quickest way to get rid of panhandlers, in my experience, is don't give them anything. They tend to look for more.
Redlands now is trying a new program where they're encouraging businesses and residents to hand them a card. Instead of pulling over and giving somebody money, you hand them this card which lists all the different resources the public or the charity resources that they can go to for food and whatever, because instead of giving cash, and we've seen all in the news where the girl stands out on the corner and then they film her getting into her Mercedes and driving away. And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it does create, it adds to the crime problem, it adds to our quality of life issues. You know,
It
I'm
gives
going to sound like the big meanie in the room, but that's the reality.
It gives our law enforcement the ability to get them to move along, rather than having to tacitly allow it to happen.
So this ordinance has been checked against other cities, and it's pretty close, and it doesn't have things that have failed in lawsuits.
I think we're kind of weak compared to other cities, but
There's a wide variety. This is fairly middle of the road, I would say. There have been some cities that have been sued that have lessened the impact of their ordinance to take out some of the provisions that are here. Other cities have not been sued and have stricter ordinances. So it's a little bit hard to predict what could happen. We're always vulnerable to a lawsuit. Anybody who wants to file a lawsuit can go down to the courthouse and do so. And we want to have the tools that are appropriate for our community. They may not be quite what another community would want.
Okay, then I believe we need to do a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing now. This is the public's chance to comment on this ordinance. Any feelings on it? Somebody feel sorry for the guys, gals? Looks like everyone is okay with it. So, close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the council? The appropriate motion would be to set it for to do this at first reading.
Mayor, if I may add, we have identified in one intersection where there is a subject that charges people to beg at that corner during certain time frames. And
A protection racket?
I guess he would be the scheduler. But he does get a portion of the revenues generated. That's
And he's
how,
within 500 feet of the off-ramp, right?
There is a popular intersection that I'm sure you're aware of in the city, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's a troll. He's a troll. You may not pass. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like you could use this.
Does that mean we're going to have trouble filling the booth this year?
You may.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. It seems like one man's panhandling, another man's ingathering or something like
Yeah.
that. So how do you distinguish between the two? It's just the opinion of the enforcement officer at the time?
I think, well, it's just me being me, but I think we have to understand that there are so many laws out there on the books that general public has no clue about, and they're all kind of tools in the tool belt, and you have to trust that the quality of our law enforcement and trust in their ability to make those type of judgments. That it's back to the stuff you see on TV. If we pull over soccer mom, we're not going to drag her out of the window by her hair and beat on her with clubs. It doesn't happen. But there are people that does happen to, and you have to differentiate between the type of people, and I think you have to leave that up to our our law enforcement to know who are the in-gatherers, who are out there witnessing, and who are out there and don't really belong in our community. So we provide them with the tools and leave those decisions up to them. I'm confident they make the right decision.
So you were starting to make a motion?
My motion is for the first reading, set the second reading, and move it.
Second reading for January 13, 2015. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it unanimously.
So we've set the second reading for January 13. We haven't
Yes.
actually approved the...
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, item number 4, another public hearing declaring stage number 2, threatened water supply shortage. So,
Have Dennis Bolt here to present a short report.
Honorable Mayor, distinguished council members, I'm here to recommend a city council recommendation to move to stage 2 threatened water supply shortage implementation of the Loma Linda Municipal Code 13.04.960 paragraphs A through J. I believe you have a copy of that, but if you don't, I'd be more than happy to paraphrase A through J for you. As you recall, back in August, we came before you and we brought you an update on the current drought conditions and the mandatory outdoor water conservation measures issued by the Governor of California and the Department of Water Resources. Here we are in December, and we're asking you to implement our Stage 2 water shortage contingency plan. Currently, we are in Stage 1, which is basically a voluntary water conservation effort on the citizens or the users of the water, as well as using water in a water-wise process, if you will. Because of the drought has not improved much, even with the most recent rain, we're still less than 1/2 of our normal rainfall, and this is after 2 consecutive years where the rainfall was well below normal levels. So we are still in the throes of the drought. We expect that the Water Control Resource Board to come again with more restrictions and more requirements on water conservation. And basically, we're asking, again, the council to declare a Stage 2 water conservation threatened process. And again, if you'd like me to review what a Stage 2 is, I'd be more than happy to do it. Does anyone have an interest in me reading that for you?
What I'd like to see is some data. I mean, you're kind of painting a dreary picture. We all know the state of California is in a drought condition. I need data specifically related to Loma Linda and what our water situation is. I'm not comfortable just taking your word to say the sky is falling because the state of California is in a drought. I want to know what Loma Linda's specific situation is.
What our specific data is and how we're doing as far as water conservation. Well, currently we are behind.
As our water supply.
The water table.
Our water table, we get 100% of our water from the Bunker Hill Basin. The Bunker Hill Basin is at its lowest level since 1954.
Yeah. I want to see something, though. I don't want you just to come in and say the sky is falling, everybody else is declaring a water shortage, so we've got a problem at Loma Linda. I believe you.
What
Okay?
I'm wondering
But I want
is,
data.
at the lowest level, does that mean 50% of the basin is gone, or 10% is gone, or what's
I apologize. I
just
was not
It's the lowest
asked
level
to bring
since
that
they started
information
keeping records
for
in
you.
1950.
What we can do is we can.
Let me put it this way. In the 80s, the Bunker Hill Basin, the concern was liquefaction.
Yeah, because it was too high.
Yeah. Now it's depletion. If you want me to come back next time to bring a PowerPoint slide showing you that, I'd be happy to do that. But it's not going to change anything, and it's not going to change the fact that the basin is at its lowest level.
I'm just not, I believe we're in a water shortage. I'm not comfortable declaring a stage 2 because now we're talking about imposing, fines and really aggressively going after people. That's what a stage 2 is. And I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead, sir. Stage 2 does not give us the authority to impose fines. The only person that gives us the authority to impose fines is the Water Control Board. They allow us to do that at our discretion. We're not, as a water department, as a conservation department, not looking to impose fines. We're really looking to educate the community on how to be more efficient in their use of water. I thought we just went to an education plan 2 months ago. So I mean, how are we educating people in 2 months? So I mean, we just went to stage 1 or whatever. So how do we even know? Is that not working? Have we given that enough time? I'm also know we're heading into this El Nino or Nino year, and I'm not saying that this next rainstorm is going to solve everything, but this is I don't know. I'm kind of with Councilman Daly. I'm not certain where we're at with all this.
Well, if you read these A's through J,
I am reading them, and I'm not real comfortable.
They all say if you do this, it's considered a waste, but it doesn't. You don't do anything about it.
I know, but I don't even. I mean, we're telling our people now you can't wash your car because that's a waste, and we're not telling them they can't wash their car. We're telling them they need to have a shut-off nozzle when they wash their car.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah, and then it says the free flow of water away from an irrigated site shall be presumptively considered excessive irrigation and waste as defined.
Yes, when you overwater. I'm sorry?
I don't know what that means.
I'll explain it for you. When you overwater your lawn and you reach the saturation point where the ground can no longer absorb the water, it runs off onto the sidewalk. Yeah. That is an excessive use of water. When you water your lawn and your sprinklers are watering the sidewalk or the street, that is an excessive use of water. Yeah. That's an inefficient use of water, not necessarily an excessive use.
Who makes those judgments?
Well, if it's running down the street, it's not a hard judgment.
Yeah, I would think it's everything runs down. It's a little bit of common sense.
If your system, okay, it's on a timer and so forth. The sidewalks get wet in the process. Now, yes. I don't know if that's excessive or not. It's not because it's blowing water onto the sidewalks. It's just the way the drainage works. So I don't know what this means. Does it mean I need to reconfigure the landscape in my yard? Who's going to interpret this, and what are the results when whoever interprets it comes and says, now wait a minute, you've got a wet sidewalk, that's excessive? I think in those cases we have to use common sense. We're not looking to impose restrictions on the citizens of Loma Linda. We're just helping them to better use water more efficiently. No problem with that. I thought we were already doing that. We are doing that. We were always in stage 1, but the state of California, the Water Control Resource Board, mandates that we move to outdoor water restrictions, and stage 1 does not have outdoor water restrictions. We are currently the only city in the valley that does not have outdoor water restrictions. We're also the only city in the valley that's not almost bankrupt. So, I'm sorry? Nothing. I just said we're also the only city in the valley that's not almost bankrupt. Well, that shows good stewardship. But it has nothing to do with, water.
On point F, for instance, it says that if you're going to fill your pool, you have to fill it at night. Water is, educate me. What's the difference between filling it at night versus? Basically, they want, and understand that I didn't write this, or we didn't write it. We're just bringing the message. Oh yeah, no. We're using the tools. We're not attacking you by any means. But what they're trying to do is eliminate water use during the day, the hottest part of the day, where you get a lot of evaporation during, the hottest part of the day. I would say from noon to 4 o'clock in the afternoon is when you get the greatest amount of evaporation. Why the pools here?
But you're filling a swimming pool,
Yeah,
the water's going in the pool.
It clearly makes no difference with the swimming
It
pool.
makes zero difference.
He's
And
saying-
another one I read in here, another place said you could only water every other day. Now, what difference does that make? I mean, to me, it just smacks of a
Well, the
nanny
point,
state kind of
Yes.
draconian.
The point
hey,
on that-
we got to slap you and get you.
the point on the every other day, and Redlands did it, is this is a funny thing about this. Redlands did this how many months ago? And they sent out notices to all the people in Loma Linda who have a, quote, Redlands post
address.
office address. So half of Loma Linda already got these restrictions from Redlands. You know, we saved a lot of money on postage.
Yeah. The reason you want to water every other day, it just reduces the amount of water you're putting on the lawn.
Yeah.
The
No,
big,
I understand that.
the
but
biggest
the
waste.
regulation that I read before said if you lived on this street, you do them every other day, and on
Yeah.
this day was a different day. And what difference does it make?
The point.
That's
the
their
point
way of
is,
controlling-
It does make a difference because if you water every other day, you water half as much.
If you do, but if you do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I do Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever, what difference does it make?
No, the difference is some people water every day,
Yeah, exactly.
and it gets them to drop down
No,
to
but I'm
every other
talking
day.
about the one where they specifically said
No, it's-
odd days versus even days.
And that's-
I have odd and you have even.
That's
I'm
just a
saying
way of
this-
keeping everybody from flushing their toilet.
They're
at the same
basically saying
instant.
if you water every day, you, going forward, you can water every other day.
Okay, so let's pick on G for a second, for those of you that own swimming pools, which I don't. Any swimming pool which does not have a cover installed during periods of non-use shall be considered a waste of water. Now, I'm going to bet you the vast majority of our citizens don't have a pool cover.
and it's a waste of water.
I would agree with
And
you.
so- and
I-
so what's gonna- what's
working
the
for the
con-
water
what are the
department
consequences?
and
None.
driving around the city, I would agree with you. And as an owner of a pool myself, I wouldn't have one if it wasn't for my wife. But you know,
My concern is by taking us to stage 2, it gets us closer to the enacting, some type of regulatory penalty. And I just don't know that we need to be there yet. We just went into stage 1. And, I mean, we're in the winter in this state, for goodness sake. I mean, we should at least wait a little while after going into stage 1 before we could declare an
Councilman
emergency.
Duper, if I can correct you, we have been in stage 1 all along.
Well, we
did
just
not
announced
just
it,
go to
what, 2 months
stage
ago?
1. It's been the law of the land.
What is there a penalty from the state?
Well,
If we don't do
you know,
this,
the
or-
bottom line is if we don't enact some sort of outdoor water restrictions, and it sounds to me like you guys would like to see something, not necessarily this. We are, running the risk of the Department of Water Resources fining us.
Well, and the other part is just good. See, the way I look at it is everything on here, except for the one about the swimming pools, which is nonsense, because it has the same evaporative surface area, whether it's full or 1 inch at the bottom. So,
Stop trying
to me, that
outthink
makes
these-
no difference. That one, but all the rest of them are just good common sense things.
Absolutely. That's
And
really what this boils down
I'm
to.
in favor of doing all of this stuff all the time, whether we've got a drought or not, because it's just a waste of water. But the problem I see if we don't do something is that, when you take your whole family down to the soda shop and you get a big old soda and everybody's got a straw and everybody's sipping and one person's going guzzle, 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 they're all dipping in the same drink. Mm-hmm. And if it looks like we're just slurping this thing up and everyone else is conserving, or this is all just gestures, okay? This is not actual conservation. This is gesture. If we don't make the same gesture everybody does, we're called out as the one who's sucking hardest on our straw. I don't see that as being
But I
good
think-
for us.
But
We're also
candidly,
the smallest user, probably. I mean, because how many other big, large cities are on the same aquifer?
Well,
Yeah, but we don't have a bunch of dead lawns like other cities.
You're probably right as far as the use, but I think Mayor Rigsby is right about the perception. The perception is that
I hate
we
that
don't
word.
care.
I hate that
yeah,
word.
and
I hate
I'm going to
perception.
tell you, I'm not going to vote for this, and the reason I'm not going to vote for it is I think your proposal's weak. You're depending on the sky is falling from everything we're seeing on television. I believe it. I
The
think
sky
we
is
have
not
drought.
falling. That's the
But
problem.
I want to see data. You say we run the risk of being fined by the state.
How much? What are the criteria that what are the risks that we're talking about? What are the water tables that we're dealing with? What are the trends that we've been seeing? But I want the respect of some data, and not simply, because from my perspective, I don't know what this does. When you say it's common sense and it's the right thing to do, I don't disagree with that. I agree with the mayor on that. But why do it if I don't see where this gets us from where we are right now, except if we don't do it, we're running the risk of being fined by I don't even know who or how much or why. And so I want some data. This is an important thing.
Absolutely.
And quite frankly, if we're going from stage 1 to stage 2, which could lead to stage 3, I want to know what stage 3 is before we get there as well. I want to know what are the criteria that's going to take us from stage 2 to stage 3. This is serious business.
Absolutely. That's why I'm
I take it
here.
very serious, and so I want data so that I can make a well-informed, intentional decision and not just vote on it because everybody's afraid of what might happen if we don't, based on the perception by other communities, the state, I don't know what all. So I want a substantive report so that I can make an informed decision. So when my neighbors say, what is this stage 2 thing all about? I can respond to them intelligently and in a respectful way. I can't do that based on this.
Certainly.
I have one comment then. I can agree with Dr. Daly. I guess it would be nice to understand, some data that perhaps says, look, the average citizen in Loma Linda uses X amount of water, comparing that to the average citizen in a nearby city or California by putting in these recommendations into place, we expect the X amount of decrease in water usage. I think those are the things that would help us make a decision. My other concern is who would go about enforcing this?
Right now, we don't have staff to do that, and that's why I mentioned to Dennis that this is more like education. That I don't have inspector to go out at night and see if you turn on.
You can already tell how many times we flush our toilet.
Check the water meter.
We're not looking to go out and enforce a draconian water restrictions. We're really looking for the ability to come into line with what the Department of Water Resources mandates we do, and go out and begin an education process for our community.
I guess when I look at a lot of this stuff, I see it more of as a quality of life type of thing. When we were looking at what we could do to change our landscape out here, we were going to put like desert scape. And I push back against that because we don't live in Hesperia. We live in Loma Linda.
Certainly.
And we choose to live here because of certain things, and it's a quality of a life and a lifestyle that we want to live. So when I turn on the evening news every other night and I see L.A. has some broken water main again with 50 bazillion gallons of freaking water flowing down the road, it pisses me off because I pay a little more than average to live in this city. I pay to have certain things because I want to live a certain way. And when there's so many other people out there that just, it's just whatever. When the state says everybody has to do this because, then they need to make sure it's equal across the board, and we need to be looking at those bigger wastes than screwing with the people that are paying for their water, because we're paying for it. So that's all.
And when you say educate the citizens, I agree with you. I think that's very important. I just don't see how this accomplishes that outcome.
This doesn't accomplish the education process. All this accomplishes is it brings us in line with the mandate of the Department of Water Resources. That's all this does. It just puts us in lockstep with what they're wanting and with our surrounding communities.
This is one city that's never quite been on the state's bandwagon. So
I can understand that. My concern is that if we're not going to walk the walk and enforce it and actually tell people, I'm watching you wash your car and you don't have a stop it, then I think passing something like this without actually enforcing it is really a waste of time.
I'm not sure I
So-
should let my kid run around with water guns anymore, because that
No,
could
not
be
the
a
water
waste.
gun. You know what I mean.
Because they might get shot.
The
but that's a
shot.
different-
I'm not talking about
That's
the
true,
water
too.
guns. But anyway, that's my view. So I mean, you know, I got to tell you, when I first got on the council, the first few conferences I attended, sitting on the water advisory board, was water, and they told us 6 years ago we are going to be in major trouble, and we are. I mean, any of you can go to Lake Shasta, and that lake is just completely drying out. So it's pretty clear that there's a major water shortage. Clearly, we may have to do more to educate our citizens.
And you laughed at Al Gore.
I'm sorry?
And you laughed at Al Gore.
Oh. But I think we need to do more clearly as a council, as a city, in educating citizens in attempting to actually follow many of these recommendations, because I do think that if everybody puts effort into it, we are going to, you know, be able to save water. But everybody's got to be on the same page. And I can see where, you know, the Water Advisory Board, or wherever they're at, want all of us to abide by this. My concern is, how to call it, whether it's really going to be something that we, once again, we need to walk the walk. So unless we're willing to enforce it and actually deal with it, then I think just as a gesture is not good enough for me.
I get that, but I just bring it back to, every time I turn on that faucet, the meter starts clicking, and I pay for every drop of water that comes out of any of the holes in my property. My water, I bought it. I pay for it. It's not free water. So before the government can dictate to you what you do with their stuff, they can't tell me what I do with my stuff. I just don't like that. It just does not sit well with me. And you know, I'm paying for it. It should be my choice on what I do with it. Now, granted, if they want to raise the rate to $10 a gallon, then I'm going to have to restrict my water use, because I won't be able to afford it.
How about when there's 10 gallons left? You know, it's like your argument is the same as the guy who says, you know, I didn't bring my parachute today, so this is a good trip so far. And he's at 1,000 feet, you know. That's why I want to know really how far down is the water table compared to how much is there. Because I'd like to get a feeling for when I'm about to pancake in my little free fall here.
Well, I'd like to think you'd like to know well before you pancake.
Exactly, but I want to know.
So
I want to judge it the whole way
things.
down.
And I think that's what this is all about. It's a process to begin to move forward so we can continue to grow. You know, we can't grow our community, we can't grow industry without water. Water belongs to the public, and even though we can pay whatever we want to pay for it, and we're entitled to do that, you know, it still doesn't mean we can waste water.
Well, my point is, I think his argument, he would back off that argument if we're down to 10% of what we started with.
Well, and let me use another analogy. And I've been saying this ever since I got on the council, when we hear about our low-income housing shortage. Oh my goodness, we are only 99% compliant. What are we going to do? We better build some more low-income housing because we are only 99% compliant. And then I asked the question, well, how many other cities in California are compliant? Oh, there's very few. And what are their percentages? Well, there's some cities that don't have any low-income housing. And again, my response is, why are we, the responsible communities, the ones that aren't in bankruptcy, the ones that do save their money, the ones that do make the right choices, why is it always these communities that have to carry the burden for the rest of the state? I guarantee you go across that freeway in San Bernardino and they're not worried about water conservation right now. I know that's not an excuse. It's like saying, you know, well, I shouldn't get a speeding ticket because that guy was speeding too. I understand that, but it does frustrate me to some degree because I don't believe the bigger users, the bigger cities, a lot of these other places really take things as seriously as we do sometimes. And sometimes we always strive to be 100% compliant with everything else, and 90% of the state are still doing what they do. That's my thing.
No, I certainly understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it, but all cities in California and all water purveyors must provide the Department of Water Resources with their gallons per day per capita usage on a monthly basis. That's a requirement of the mandate. We have been doing that since August. The only thing we're not doing is we're not restricting outdoor water use. Now, in all sincerity, like many of you, I thought this was kind of poorly composed and could have done a better job writing it, but this is what we were given and this is what we have. And I certainly understand Councilman Daley's, desire to see hard facts, and if I would have had any idea that that's what they were looking for, I could have brought that for you. There's certainly no shortage of statistics. There's no shortage of facts to prove that we are in an actual drought and that the drought is significant. But remember, our weather is cyclical, and right now we're in a cycle of drought, and maybe this year, 2 years, 3 years down the road we won't. I mean, if you don't believe we're in a drought, just take a look at what's going on in Northern California, the various reservoirs up there. The one thing that we have done here in Southern California is we've done a good job managing our water and building an infrastructure to store it. That's the advantage we have over Northern California and why we're further along this continuum than they are. They are in an actual shortage where, cities are borrowing water and they're going through water delivery and some really crazy, insane stuff that you wouldn't think would take place in the 21st century in America. We're not looking at that now, and we're still a long way away because we've done a good job building reservoirs, we've done a good job of groundwater recharge, and we've done a good job of building dikes along the Santa Ana River and where the water comes out of the mountains so it can repercolate our groundwater.
And I guess, and I appreciate your comments, I mean, this was insightful. I guess the education of the community regarding the severity of our situation needs to start with this group. And, and when I say I want data, now that you're telling me how much data there is, I'm worried you're going to flood me with data.
You don't want a data dump.
Yeah, no, I don't want a data dump. But if you can bring basically the essential factoids that we need to understand as we try to develop and communicate with the public about what the Loma Linda water situation is. I have no idea if our situation is worse than Redlands or better than Redlands or San Bernardino, or if our water table is this deep, if we're down to here or we're up to here, but it's dropping. I don't know. So it's practical knowledge that I need in order for me to be able to do my job as a councilman and as a representative of the city to the community that I live in.
Let me propose this. Let me bring back in January meetings with the data, and we have a lot of data. You said
yes, absolutely.
Have a lot of information.
The only thing that would be difficult, in all sincerity, is to compare our water shortage to the city of Redlands, to the city of San Bernardino, because basically we get the water from the same place. It all comes from the Bunker Hill Basin. Now, the city of San Bernardino, the city of Redlands, East Valley Municipal Water District, West Valley Municipal Water District, they all have access to State Water Resource Project water. So they bring water from from Northern California. But their allocations have been cut, and they're seeing less and less water come from the State Water Project, which puts more pressure on the Bunker Hill Basin.
Because of the Endangered Species Act.
I was going to add that. One of the challenges, I forgot to mention that, we have a drought, but we have actually a ton of water in the Sacramento Delta that there's been efforts to save certain fish, which prevented a bunch of water from coming this way. So there is the other factor that we should take into account, that we do have access to more water, but some folks up in the north want us to protect a few fish.
I can't argue about the ecology of the politics, but if you think back to the last election, one of the largest water bonds in history was just passed, so that's got to tell you a little something about what's going on. It's just not the state saying we're short of water. I think everybody realizes it. But if it's factoids you want, I'll provide them for you. If it's a rewrite of this to skinny it down and make it more appropriate, we can do that. But again, that takes action from the council. And I personally, as a water professional, I would just like to see us kind of come into the fold so, we can look at our peers and say we are doing our part like everyone else, to be good stewards of our water.
No argument with that, but I need to be educated.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I'd hate for us to be, because we're all essentially swimming in the same pool. I'd hate for everybody else to have a no relieving yourself policy, and we don't, because we like our section of the pool.
Yeah.
I think it's probably This is, like you said, it's a prelude to doing something, but it's one of the steps you take on your way, because at some point, if it doesn't rain again, we're going to run out of water. Nobody will have lawns. Nobody will be flushing their toilets, and everybody will be moving to another state. So,
but you also
I know that's not going to happen, but it could.
But you also understand that the logical follow-up question to implementing stage 2 is, what is stage 3?
Exactly. I'm curious too. I'm curious too about that. And I'd like to know, I think it would be helpful just for perspective, like I said, is to know, that the Bunker Hill Basin started 10,000 feet deep and it's whatever now, whatever.
Well, I can tell you that some of our wells, 2 years ago when I started working with the water department here at Loma Linda, have dropped more than 100 feet.
Out of how many? Out of how many? I need to know the denominator to know. Because, for example, I know there are 3 layers.
Mm-hmm.
What's the depth of the first layer? What's the depth of the second layer? What's the depth of the third layer in the basin?
Okay.
I
don't have that information off the top of my head. I can tell you that certain wells 2 years ago we were sounding, and the water table was roughly 190 feet. Now it's down to 290 feet.
Mm-hmm. And if it's 10,000 feet, then we're 3% down. If it's 1,000 feet, we're 30% down. And
Right.
Those are 2 different panic levels. Yeah.
Right. I don't have that information right off my fingertips. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We've had wells in those 3 layers, right? So we know roughly how deep they are. Do you have any recollection?
I don't think we have any wells 10,000 feet deep.
But I'm just, that's a...
Yeah.
I don't know how deep
I think
this valley was before it filled up with San Mateo Formation. Right. I don't know.
Another thing to keep in mind, and again, this is more of an education point of view, the water table, if it goes down for too long of a period, no longer is able to retain that water. That ground hardens up, and it's no longer permeable, and the water table drops even further. So there's a lot of science to this that, it's just not a matter of the water table going down and going up. Prolonged periods of overusing the water table leads to problems with the inability of the water table to recharge.
Yeah.
You understand we need that context.
I do, yes, and I apologize for not bringing it to you. I just wasn't given those instructions in all sincerity.
Do what we do. If something doesn't work right, we blame JAR.
There you go. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks. I think we need to do a public hearing because I think
it's tabled, isn't it?
Yeah, but we advertise it. So let's open the public hearing. Any comment from the peanut gallery? Yes.
And if the matter is continued, Mr. Mayor, you would want to continue that to a date certain.
We'll deal with that after the public hearing, yeah.
Dick Wiley, as a suggestion, when you have campaign funds, somebody's trying to raise it, whether it be the university or whatever, sometimes they put a thermometer out there. Now, the problem that I've got, what does the Bunker Hill Basin look like? Is it like a swimming pool? Or is it all the same size underground? If it's a swimming pool, look at the deep end. That's where your water is. But when you get to the mountain, this whole valley is sort of in that Bunker Hill Basin. You can't tell me, if you go to the gas station tonight, how much gas is in the tank. The guy that runs the place may have an idea, but anybody else doesn't. And if you look at a swimming pool as an example, are you looking at the shallow end or the deep end, and where are we in that? And what is the water that's being drawn related to other ones? Now, I'm afraid to say that some of this stuff, if you take the fire department's water tender, one guy is standing there running the pump. He can tell you how much water's in that tank. And I've asked a couple of people about that. What does the basin look like? And how much capacity, usable capacity, do we have? If you put a board up, a couple places in town, say, this is the side view, and we're here. We can always go back and paint that over, we're here. It's before you. And
yeah, that's why I asked, because I want to know where are we relative to where we were and how much do we have left. And then people start panicking appropriately.
Well, and I think everybody, I turn the water tap on, it never dry. So we don't worry about it because it always comes out the faucet. And we are looking beyond that. And this is where I think this type of thing, we go back to kids. The kids will understand this a lot quicker than we will. So I think we're in the right direction. And I say, when Dennis made the comment when he was here in August, if we get to stage 3, one of the last near-end requirements, anybody that has nurseries, some of your Christmas tree farms, places like that, the water will be shut off or you'll be fined. Who's going to pay for their loss? Not the city. The state will pay for it. And the state doesn't look at that.
I kind of wonder, we talk about how Northern California is hurting, and that down here that we've done, we're better, in a better position they are. I wonder if a lot of this is our water professionals thinking that at some point the state may try to take or seize some of our water to supplement the North. And I think that's maybe where where a lot of our people, am I right? And I think that's the fear. And so I think which is unfortunate.
What I will do, I did give Dennis a copy of that. Anybody gets the Sun or the Redlands Daily Facts, they put out that 50-some page drought manual. And there's some startling ideas and graphs in there. And I will get one for you because it said between June and August, what was before that, how this extreme area keeps moving as far as usage. And I looked at that and I said, okay, what's another 4 months? September, October, November. I said, we could be in a very extreme situation the way this thing's moving. And it goes on south and on east. But I'll give that to you so you can look at these pictures, and it's an eye-opener.
Okay, any other comments? Public hearing is closed, and I think the appropriate motion is to table to a date certain, or adjourn to a date certain, or what? Continue to a date certain. Item. Shall we go with January 13?
Yes.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion?
I will make that motion that we continue this on January 13th.
Okay, any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. It's approved by 4 3/4 votes to 0. Yeah, it's unanimous. And we go to the consent calendar.
I have a couple of questions on the demands register.
Okay. And I had a question on item number 10.
Okay, go. What's your question on 5?
On page 274, we see a bill for AT&T cellular service, and I thought we used Verizon here at the city. Is there a reason why we're not with just one company?
We use, both companies. We use Verizon for Wi-Fi access and data cards and a couple of the phones, and then the remainder on the voice products are AT&T.
Any reason why we're just not all in one? Or
We're transferring everything to AT&T. A couple of years ago when we set this up, AT&T just didn't have the coverage, especially around the city yard, for the water department guys, because they're the ones that use those data cards to manage the SCADA system. Since then, AT&T's improved their coverage.
And then on page 280, I see we purchased a turkey fryer from Lowe's. I was just wondering what the turkey fryer was for. Oh. Okay. I didn't get an invite, so. No, it's not a big deal. I was just curious.
I don't want an invite for turkey. Thank you.
Nobody got hurt. There's no industrial issues there, right? No, nobody got burned, fried. Good.
Just the turkey.
Just the turkey. That's it. I'm good with everything else.
And if you serve a juicy turkey, that's a waste of water.
I just think we may want to get an update to all of us, maybe in closed session, as to what the personnel items are. I knew of only one, not more than one, so maybe it would be a good idea for you to update us at the next meeting in closed session as to what they are, because it sounds like the legal bills keep piling up here, and I want to get a clear understanding as to why and where we're going with that.
Okay. So then, would someone like to move the consent calendar?
A second.
Okay, discussion. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. It's approved. We have reports of councilmen. I have the sad task of announcing a couple of deaths of people important to our city in the past. Dan Smith was our community development director from 1988 to 2001. He had passed away last month. We're thankful for his service and wish his family well. The other is a gentleman that I served with on some of these committees, George Pendred, a longtime member of Budget, Senior Center Board, Parks Committee, Senior Center volunteer. He passed away last week. He was a very faithful attendee to a lot of these committees. So we'll miss him and wish his family well. Any other reports of councilmen?
I would just public service announcement that it's a double-edged sword that gas prices have gone down, but as a result, it's actually affecting the amount of money that we come into the city that goes into us because we get a percentage of sales tax. So just to remind everybody to try to gas up in our town if they can, instead of other towns. And also, of course, buy as much as you can here in Loma Linda. A new car, a new iPad over at the bookstore. They got them in stock, plenty, in time for Christmas.
Those?
I'm sorry?
They still make those?
Oh, yeah.
Hasn't Google?
And they're selling well, too. But it was one of the
conquered
few stores that actually had them in stock because, they're pretty popular for Christmas. So iPad minis, iPad Air 2s. The new iMac, that's a good one, too, a 5K screen. All available right here in Loma Linda. You don't have to go all the way to Rancho Cucamonga. Does not give them a sales tax.
I've seen you in
Spend it
Rancho
here.
Cucamonga a few times, though, out in front of that Apple store. I'm just saying.
I do go sometimes there if I have to get like an iPhone because the bookstore doesn't sell the iPhones.
Interesting point you made about fuel sales tax, and I'll bring this up real quick. League of Cities, one of the topics that's come up and that's being discussed around the state is, for example, you think about all your road maintenance and stuff is done through tax on fuel sales, correct? So what they're trying to figure out now is they believe there's going to be a huge push in the next 2 or 3 years for more eco-friendly vehicles like electric and things like that. The problem is all those people driving those electric vehicles are not paying taxes via fuel, so they're not paying for the upkeep of our roadways. So now the quandary is, how do we continue to keep up our roadways that they're enjoying when they're not paying their taxes? So the state is, Priya says yes, The state is looking for a way to tax these electric vehicles based on mileage. So you may have some
VMT.
device in your vehicle
VMT, yeah.
that reports back to the state how much you're driving. It's one of those, you understand why it's going to happen, but you see there's really no way to avoid paying Caesar.
I guess I would ask, they're probably paying a lot in registration fees. So where's that money going?
Well, a lot of that goes
I don't
to
know that
us.
it's as far as I know, I don't think it's any different in registration fees.
And-
from
Oh,
a
I'm just
standard
saying,
vehicle.
registration fee, other states, it's $31 to register your car. Here it's $1,200 or whatever, depending on what car you have.
And all low tax advocates beware, because Sandbag will just put in another toll road. If there's not enough tax for fixing roads, they'll just borrow the money and toll you.
But they
No,
don't
and
need
that's
to
the
get-
plan already, right? The 10 and pretty much everything else, Redlands Boulevard,
They'll just
Anderson.
expand the SBX line.
Yeah, SBX will, when SBX becomes the preferred mode of transport, we'll all be dead.
Exactly.
And our grandchildren will be dead. And they'll have to rebuild it because it'll be crumbling.
I do have, oh, go ahead. I'm going to, different topic.
Add that one which, it doesn't really help us directly, but indirectly, but lately our airport has gotten increased international traffic. For example, today we had a flight from Finland, actually arrived yesterday, and they bought $14,000 worth of fuel. A lot of that sales tax is going to go to the city of San Bernardino, but nevertheless, if we could promote our international airport, we all benefit.
I do have one report. Every day I watch to see if anybody's using that bridge walking across the campus parking lot there, and they're actually using it. And I've actually heard some positive reports, so I know I've spoken somewhat negatively in the past about it, but if people are actually using it, number one. Number two, is there any way that you could look into, when the light turns red there, people are going all sorts of different directions. Can we look into having it so the light turns red all four ways and then you can cross diagonally?
Well, you can currently, I think.
No.
Are they doing separate for the...
Yeah, they have, because people are coming out of the parking structure and they're going this way too. So they have the light turns green and red, green and red. So, and cars are turning left and right and people just kind of angle across anyway. I wonder if we could go to something like they do in other countries where the light is red everywhere, and then everybody can walk, and they can angle across this way and angle across that way.
We did look at that. Let me go back and check that again. Okay, so this is at the light at the crosswalk.
At the light at the crosswalk where the parking structure is, because people are just angling across anyway, and cars are turning left, going into the structure and out of the structure, and I don't know, I'm just afraid something bad's going to happen.
Well, the actual plan is to allow less pedestrian crossing by lengthening the time that the cars get to go in order to encourage people to go up and over on the bridge. And if it gets to the point where once they put in the patient parking garage farther up the street, if it gets to the point where the pedestrians significantly impede the flow of traffic, there may be even fencing and no pedestrian crossing of that street, so forcing everyone across. Because at some point, you have to separate cars from people because they don't do well together.
Are you running out of water there, Dr. Daly?
Next to a thirsty guy, he tanked the whole.
Got a stage 2 alert
there?
over on the left side of the
That's
dais
why I don't
over
want
there.
water restrictions.
That was-
I won't be able to drink.
That was policy K. He didn't even push that one. Yeah.
It's a thirsty world.
Yes. Okay, Councilman, have you done enough damage? Okay, how about reports of officers? None. Then
I have
Ms.
one comment to make, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
just so the community is aware that this year on December 21 and 22, Firemen's Association has had some communication with Santa Claus, and he will be touring in a sleigh the streets of the neighborhoods with candy canes, and I think on the 21st, neighborhoods on the south side of Barton Road, and the 22nd on the north side of Barton Road. So we will try to get that rat out and communicate it a little better.
Will he be able to get through in my neighborhood with the big fire engine? That's a joke.
He's going to come with the little fire engine. I think the sleigh doesn't require a fire engine. So it's good news. He'll be in your neighborhood.
You know, you talked about the fire department, and a couple quick things about that. Last week in church, they showed us a little video that the church did in distributing food and other items to needy families in San Bernardino, and I was very happy to see the firefighters being very much involved in that process. So it was nice to see our firefighters. I've never seen so many pictures of firefighters in our church before. And the other thing that we should mention, and Desi was there this Sunday, we had our 5K and 10K through Loma Linda, our Loma Linda Classic, and it was very well attended. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but what I've been
1,411.
told... Okay, I believe it was a record. I think that was...
1,407 or something like that.
Exceeded it significantly. So it was well attended. The university was involved. They were able to encourage employees to be a part of it. Saw a lot of young families encouraging people to start exercising and running. So it was great to see everybody out there.
Okay, then the City Council is adjourned. And our next is the successor agency, the redevelopment agency. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Would the public like to speak on any items not on the agenda? Hearing none, the consent calendar is there for your motion.
I'll move it.
Okay, any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. And we're adjourned. The next is the Housing Authority. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Would the public like to speak on any items not on the agenda? Hearing none, the consent calendar.
I will move that.
Somebody. Okay, any other discussion? Those in favor say aye. Opposed,
Aye.
no. It's the opinion of the chair. The ayes have it. Any member reports? Any reports of officers? We are adjourned. That completes the scheduled items for this evening. Thank you all. And if you are sitting at the dais, come back for your mayor's Christmas gift.